So picture this. You finally sit down on the couch after, I don't know, a 50-hour week.
Oh, a classic setup.
Right. You're exhausted. Your body is perfectly still. You have queued up a movie. You have a blanket. You are physically situated in an environment designed entirely for comfort.
Yes.
But your brain is just screaming at
Oh,
you.
I'm absolutely screaming.
It is flashing this neon sign pointing to the dishes crusting over in the sink. It's projecting a mental spreadsheet of unread emails. It's just aggressively whispering that you're falling behind, that you're dropping the ball, and that you are fundamentally failing at life just by sitting there.
Wow. Yeah, that's heavy.
I mean, why does taking a break feel like a moral failure?
Well, the disconnect between your physical environment and your internal psychological state in that moment is, it's violent.
Violent. That's a strong word.
But it is. Your body is signaling safety and recovery, right? The couch, the blanket.
Yeah.
But your nervous system is trapped in a full-blown threat response. It's treating a dirty plate like a literal predator.
A predator. Okay, yeah, that makes total sense. We are dissecting that exact feeling today in this deep dive. And the source material we are pulling from to understand this, well, it isn't a peer-reviewed psychology paper on generalized anxiety disorder.
Right, not at all.
No, we are looking at excerpts from an English language learning show.
Which is just so fascinating.
It really is. It's a program called Skillify English, and it's hosted by two teachers named John and Neha. And the specific lesson we're looking at is targeted at B1 level learners.
Right, which, just for context, B1 is the threshold of intermediate fluency. So these are learners who are moving past those basic survival phrases like, ordering coffee or asking for directions.
Now, where's the bathroom stage?
Exactly. At the B1 level, you are learning to articulate abstract concepts. You're trying to navigate social nuances and describe, complex internal emotional states.
And out of all the abstract concepts John and Neha could have chosen to help their students practice everyday conversation, the topic they landed on is productivity guilt and the art of true rest.
That's a choice.
I had to read that twice when I was looking at the sources. Because, we are not analyzing English grammar today. We are using their lesson as a mirror.
Yeah.
If two language teachers decided that navigating productivity guilt is essential foundational vocabulary for participating in modern society, well, that tells us something pretty terrifying about the global state of exhaustion.
It implies that this feeling is no longer just a localized phenomenon, it's universal.
Universal, right.
Because if you are constructing a curriculum for international learners, you have to choose topics with universal resonance, right? John and Neha are basically operating on the assumption that whether a listener is in Tokyo or Buenos Aires or Berlin, they will intimately understand the panic of trying to sit still.
Wow.
The B1 curriculum is basically declaring that to speak English in the modern world, you literally must know how to apologize for not working.
That is a bleak but honestly entirely accurate assessment. Neha opens the lesson by dropping a scenario that is almost uncomfortably relatable.
She really does.
She asks John right at the start. She says, "When was the last time you sat down on the sofa to finally relax? But your brain just wouldn't stop asking, shouldn't you be doing something?" She doesn't ease into it at all.
No warm-up.
None. She goes straight for the jugular of modern anxiety.
And John's response illustrates just how chronic this condition is. He doesn't recount a high-stress period during finals week 10 years ago.
Right, he says it happened yesterday.
Literally yesterday.
Yeah.
He tries to watch a movie, and instantly his mind interrupts to remind him about a messy kitchen and a couple of unanswered emails.
But his reaction is what completely fascinates me. He pauses the movie, he gets up, he starts cleaning. He completely aborts the attempt to rest.
He negotiates with the anxiety, and he just loses immediately.
Because the anxiety is highly persuasive.
It is. Because in that moment, the discomfort of sitting still with the guilt is actually higher than the physical discomfort of cleaning the kitchen.
Oh, that's so true.
And that is when Neha delivers a line in the text that, it completely reframes the whole experience.
Yeah, she tells him, "You're physically sitting on the sofa, but your guilt is still walking around the room."
Such a great line.
That specific phrase, "your guilt is still walking around the room," it's doing a lot of heavy lifting.
It really is. It exteriorizes the emotion.
Okay, unpack that.
Exteriorizes.
Yeah, it separates the physical self, which is trapped on the cushions, from the psychological self. The psychological self is pacing the floorboards, scrutinizing the dust on the television stand, hyperventilating about the inbox.
Like a ghost haunting your own living room.
Exactly. And exteriorizing the guilt is a really crucial cognitive step. What Neha is describing here is a severe form of cognitive dissonance.
Right.
The organism, which is you, the listener, is receiving completely conflicting data. The muscles are stationary, but the brain is generating cortisol and adrenaline.
The stress hormones.
Right, the neurochemicals required for movement and problem solving. So when you sit on the couch, but your guilt is pacing the room, you are experiencing the biological equivalent of pressing the gas pedal and the brake at the exact same time. Oh man, the engine just revs, overheats, and burns out.
Exactly.
And the engine burning out leads directly to the concept they introduce next, which is the ruined weekend.
Oh, we all know the ruined weekend.
We have all lived this. You log off on Friday evening, and you spend the next 48 hours in this kind of purgatory of half resting and half panicking.
Yes.
You don't actually do the work you are stressing about, but you also don't enjoy the time off. You just vibrate with tension until Monday morning, and then you arrive back at your desk more depleted than when you left.
And this brings up the fundamental question of why the chores become the escape hatch in these moments. Like, why did John choose to clean the kitchen?
Right.
It is not because he has some deep passion for sterile countertops.
I would hope not.
Right. It is because scrubbing a sink offers a predictable, closed-loop cycle of productivity.
Wait. Break down that closed-loop cycle. What makes the sink different from, say, the inbox?
Well, think about most modern knowledge work, which is what generates this specific type of pervasive guilt. It's abstract and it's never-ending.
True.
An email inbox is never truly done. It just pauses until the next message arrives. A marketing strategy is never finished.
There's always another metric.
Always. But a dirty kitchen, you apply soap, you scrub, you rinse, and boom, it is visibly clean.
It's tangible.
Highly tangible. It provides an immediate, localized hit of dopamine. When the brain is overwhelmed by the existential dread of infinite tasks, it seeks the cheapest, fastest available dopamine hit of completion.
Oh, wow. So John couldn't handle the vulnerability of doing nothing, so he self-medicated by completing a minor physical task.
He self-medicated with dish soap.
He self-medicated with dish soap? That is incredibly dark, but it makes perfect sense.
It does.
You are basically bargaining with the pacing guilt. You say to the guilt, look, I am producing value, the counter is shining, please let me watch this movie now.
But the guilt never honors the deal.
Never. It just points to laundry basket next.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The tasks are entirely arbitrary. The underlying drive is just this desperate need to prove to yourself that you are still generating output. And this is why John explicitly pauses the lesson to establish psychological safety for the learners. He tells them, just so you feel safe, this is a B1 level episode.
Wait, is he just talking about the vocabulary there, or is there a subtext to that?
It functions on two levels, actually. Literally, yes, he is promising that the grammar won't be overwhelming. But pedagogically, he is acknowledging that confronting your own inability to rest is a highly vulnerable, often shameful experience.
Because it feels like a personal failure.
Exactly. Admitting that a dirty kitchen can bully you out of enjoying a Saturday requires a very safe environment. If the listener is expanding their cognitive load to process new English words, John wants to reduce their emotional load by validating their exhaustion.
That's actually beautiful. I want you, the listener, to look around your own living space right now, or just think about your routine. What is your messy kitchen?
Good question.
What is that microscopic, ultimately irrelevant task that suddenly morphs into a life or death emergency the second you sit down with a cup of tea?
Oh, for me, it's organizing my desktop icons.
Yes. Or reorganizing your folders. Or suddenly noticing the baseboards need dusting. Like, who dusts baseboards?
No one, until they need to avoid resting.
Exactly. Pay attention to the specific escape hatch your brain builds to avoid the terror of stillness.
And identifying that specific behavior is necessary, for sure. But it only really treats the symptom. Neha and John pivot the lesson to address the pathogen itself.
Right. If the guilt is pacing the room, how did it get inside the house in the first place?
Exactly. They diagnose the root cause with a very clinical word, conditioning.
Right. Neha says, I think the biggest reason is conditioning. If you grow up hearing things like don't be lazy and always stay busy, you stop seeing rest as normal.
And conditioning is not a passive experience. It is an active, sustained psychological training program.
Yeah.
We're talking about operant conditioning here. From childhood, we are rewarded for visible output. Good grades, gold stars, perfect attendance record.
Oh, the perfect attendance records. They really got us with those.
They did. And conversely, we are penalized for stillness. Daydreaming in class is punished. Staring out the window is corrected.
Sit up straight, pay attention.
Exactly. The message is relentless. Your value is entirely dependent on your visible forward momentum.
And that phrase, "don't be lazy," is deployed as a moral absolute. They highlight how this training forces a massive shift in our perspective. We stop viewing rest as a biological necessity, and we start viewing it as a reward.
Yes, the reward framing is so dangerous.
I struggle with this framing so much, because if rest is a reward, it turns human existence into a transactional arcade game.
Wait, I love that. Expand on the arcade game analogy.
Well, it feels like we are handed a bucket of tokens at birth, right? And
Oh,
we have
yeah.
to run around playing skee ball for 12 hours a day, desperately hoarding these tiny, worthless productivity tickets.
Oh, the tickets, yes.
And only when we have amassed like 10,000 tickets are we allowed to walk up to the prize counter and purchase 15 minutes of guilt-free time on our own sofa.
That's spot on.
The baseline assumption is that we owe the universe our labor simply for existing, and we have to buy back our own free time.
The arcade analogy captures the exhaustion perfectly. But we need to look at the neurochemistry driving that transaction, too.
Okay, let's go there.
Those tickets you're talking about are essentially bursts of dopamine tied to task completion. When rest is framed as a reward, the brain categorizes it alongside other rare high-value treats.
Like eating a piece of cake.
Exactly. But unlike eating a piece of cake, which is a proactive indulgence, you take an action to eat it. Resting is an absence of action.
Oh, I see where this is going.
The conditioned brain does not know how to process an absence of action as a reward. It interprets the absence of action as a cessation of earning.
So you aren't cashing in tickets. You are just standing in the arcade, losing potential points.
Exactly, you're just watching the timer tick down.
Which leads directly to John's most devastating insight in the lesson. He says we tie our self-worth to our productivity, and we slowly start believing the lie that if we do more, we matter more.
That is the terminal stage of the conditioning.
Terminal stage.
Yes, when doing becomes inextricably linked to being.
If we do more, we matter more. Let's flip that over to look at the ugly underside of that statement, because it's dark.
It really is.
If doing more equals mattering more, then the logical inverse is that when you stop doing, you stop mattering.
Wango.
When you sit on that couch, your brain isn't just worried about the dirty dishes. It is experiencing a literal existential crisis. It believes that by ceasing production, you are actively eroding your own right to exist.
And that explains the intensity of the fight-or-flight response. The pacing guilt isn't just a nagging roommate, it is an internal alarm system warning you that your identity is dissolving.
Wow.
Think about it. If your entire self-concept is built on being the person who gets things done, what are you in the moments when nothing is getting done?
You are nothing. That is the terrifying void.
Exactly.
But okay, I have to push back here. Or at least I need to play devil's advocate for the reality we actually live in.
Fair enough.
Neha and John are painting this beautiful picture where we divorce our worth from our output. But if I just exist and breathe on a Tuesday, my boss is going to fire me.
Right.
My landlord does not accept inherent human value as a form of rent payment.
Unfortunately not.
So how do we reconcile this B1 English lesson ideal with the very real, brutal demands of a capitalist economy?
It is a vital distinction to make. The source material is not advocating for the cessation of labor. John and Neha are not suggesting you abandon your responsibilities and go live in the woods.
As tempting as that sounds.
Right. The intervention they are proposing targets the internal metric of self-worth, not the external reality of employment.
Okay, internal metric.
The danger arises when the economic requirement to produce value metastasizes into a psychological requirement to produce value in order to love yourself.
So it is about boundary lines. I can sell my labor to my employer from 9 to 5, but I cannot sell them my internal definition of a good day.
Precisely. Right now, if you ask someone how their day was, their answer is almost always a list of completed tasks.
Yeah, totally. It was great. I cleared my inbox, finished the report, and went to the gym.
Exactly. The day is only deemed good if it yielded high output. Unlearning the conditioning means actively decoupling the quality of your day from the quantity of your tasks.
Which is why John brings up the concept of perfection. He reminds listeners that you do not have to earn rest by being perfect all day.
Yes.
That word perfect is the ultimate trap. I mean, how often do you deny yourself a break because the day wasn't flawless? You finished the report, but you skipped the gym, so therefore you don't, quote unquote, deserve to watch the movie.
It's a rigged game.
The finish line is attached to a motorized track. It just keeps retreating the closer you get.
And the demand for perfection before rest guarantees that rest will never occur. because human execution is fundamentally flawed. We aren't robots.
Right.
This is where Neha transitions the lesson from diagnosing the illness to prescribing the treatment. She asks, so how do we fix this? And her first step is cognitive. She says, step one is changing the story in your head.
Okay, I have to be honest, I am always highly suspicious of advice that boils down to just think differently.
Oh, I agree. It can sound very empty.
It sounds great on a motivational poster, but when the guilt is physically pacing the room and my heart rate is elevated, a positive mantra feels like trying to stop a freight train with a Post-it note.
That's a great image.
I mean, how do you actually overwrite an operating system that has been running since childhood?
Well, you cannot just will the anxiety away, which is why Neha doesn't stop at change the story. She introduces a specific mechanical framework for the learners. And it's all built around the concept of being intentional.
Intentional.
She defines it clearly for the B1 audience. She says, when you are intentional, you do something on purpose, not by accident.
Doing it on purpose versus by accident. I really want to drill down into the mechanics of this because I think this is where the actual life raft is.
Yes, let's do it.
Let's compare two different ways of ending up on the couch. Scenario A. You work for 14 hours straight, you are severely dehydrated, your vision is blurring, and you physically trip and fall onto the cushions. Your body just gives out.
Right, total collapse.
Scenario B. You look at the clock at 7 p.m., you close your laptop, you walk over to the couch, and you sit down.
The physical posture is identical in both scenarios. You're lying on the couch in both. But the psychological states are entirely opposed.
Radically different.
Scenario A is an accidental collapse. You are resting under duress. Your body basically staged a mutiny against your brain. And in this state, the guilt is at its absolute maximum because your brain still believes you should be working, but your biological hardware simply failed. You feel defeated.
Yes, resting under protest, your brain is sitting there furious at the body for needing sleep.
Exactly. But scenario B leverages a psychological loophole known as the Zeigarnik effect.
Ooh, okay. Walk us through the Zeigarnik effect.
So, the Zeigarnik effect is a cognitive bias where people remember uncompleted or interrupted tasks much better than completed ones.
Really?
Yes. Unfinished tasks create psychological tension and they occupy active cognitive load. So when you sit on the couch while vaguely thinking about unanswered emails, those emails are an uncompleted task keeping the brain on high alert.
So how does the word intentional actually hack that bias?
By redefining what the task is.
Wait, say more about that.
If your goal is finish all work, you will always fail. And the Zeigarnik effect will keep you stressed forever because work is never done.
Right.
But if you make a deliberate executive decision to say, my current task is to rest for 30 minutes, you've created a new, achievable parameter.
It is a Jedi mind trick.
It really is.
You are feeding the brain's insatiable hunger for task completion by doing nothing into a highly specific action item.
Yes. Neha explicitly offers this mantra in the lesson. Right now, I am intentionally resting so I can be stronger later. By stating that, you are giving the brain an assignment.
And brains love assignments.
They do. When you sit on the couch intentionally, you are actively succeeding at the current task. The brain receives the dopamine hit of completion, not from scrubbing the kitchen, but from successfully executing the command to rest. The tension dissolves because the loop is closed.
Wow. This completely highlights the danger of what we think of as normal relaxation today. I mean, think about doom scrolling.
Doom scrolling.
You sit on the edge of your bed, you open a social media app, and an hour just evaporates. That is accidental resting.
Completely accidental.
There was no intent. Your brain wasn't given a clear off-ramp, so it just hovered in a state of hypervigilance while your thumbs moved, and then you stand up feeling more drained than when you sat down.
Because doom scrolling is not rest. It is high-speed data processing without physical movement.
That's terrifying.
True intentional rest, as John notes, is strategic. He tells the learners, sometimes resting is smarter than pushing. It is preparing you to use your time better later.
Resting is smarter than pushing. That completely rebrands relaxation from like a lazy indulgence into a tactical advantage.
Yeah.
It forces you to view your own energy as a finite resource that requires active management.
And to test whether the learners actually understand this difference between an accidental collapse and intentional recovery, John gives them homework.
Language class homework, love it.
He asks them to answer one question. What is one simple thing you do to truly relax?
I love this assignment because it is a total trap.
It is a trap.
If you haven't been paying attention to the lesson, you can't answer it. If your answer is, I pass out while watching YouTube, that isn't true relaxation. It doesn't answer the prompt.
No, it doesn't.
To answer John's question, you have to have cultivated a specific intentional practice.
It demands self-observation. It requires the learner to identify a behavior that actually downregulates their nervous system.
Right, like what actually works for you.
Exactly. Is it brewing a specific type of tea? Is it staring at the ceiling for 10 minutes without a device in the room? Finding the answer requires moving from theory to practice.
Speaking of moving from abstract theory to concrete reality, this is where John deploys what I consider the absolute masterpiece of this entire B1 lesson.
The battery.
Yes. To cement the biological necessity of rest, he skips the dense neuroscience completely and uses a metaphor that is universally understood in every single culture on Earth. He compares the human body and mind to a phone battery.
It's so elegant. He says, think about your body and your mind like a phone battery. If you use your phone all day and never charge it, it dies and stops working. We are exactly the same.
Let's stretch this analogy because the implications are staggering when you really look at how we treat our devices versus how we treat ourselves.
Let's do it.
Okay, you look at your phone. It is 2 p.m. The battery icon in the top right corner turns red and drops to 10%. What is your immediate reaction?
You alter your behavior to preserve the remaining power. You lower the screen brightness. You close out of heavy applications. And your primary goal becomes locating a power source.
Exactly. You protect the device. You don't scream at the phone.
You don't.
You don't look at the screen and yell, "You lazy piece of garbage. Why can't you just keep rendering this 4K video? You have no work ethic."
That would be absurd.
We accept the phone's power depletion as a non-negotiable law of physics.
But when we experience the exact same depletion in our own cognitive or physical reserves, we apply a brutal moral framework to it.
We attack our own character.
Always.
We hit 10% battery at 2 p.m., and instead of finding a charger, we tell ourselves we are unmotivated, we are weak, we are failing. We try to force the brain to keep running high-power spreadsheet apps while the battery is flashing red, and then we are genuinely shocked when the whole system crashes.
And what makes John's analogy so surgically effective for language learners is that it completely strips the moral weight away from exhaustion.
Yes, the moral weight. That is the core issue here.
Societal conditioning demands that we view energy levels through an ethical lens. High energy equals good character. Low energy equals bad character.
Which is insane when you say it out loud.
It is. But the battery metaphor destroys that paradigm. A dead lithium-ion battery does not have a character flaw. It is simply depleted of a measurable chemical resource.
Right.
By mapping human fatigue onto this mechanical model, John and Neha give the listener permission to view their own exhaustion objectively. It is not a failure of willpower. It is a failure of resource management. You cannot pour from an empty cup, and a phone cannot operate on 0%.
Okay, if we're going to commit to this metaphor, I have a question. What does human background app refresh look like?
Oh, that's a brilliant question.
Because my phone drains a lot of battery doing things I didn't even ask it to do. It's just draining in my pocket.
Human background app refresh is the silent killer of cognitive capacity.
Yeah, okay, tell me more.
It is the subconscious rumination about a deadline that is 3 weeks away. It is replaying a slightly awkward conversation you had in the hallway yesterday.
Oh, I hate that one.
Right. It's the low-grade, constant processing of the daily news cycle. All of these apps are running in the background of your mind, draining 20% to 30% of your daily battery life before you even sit down to do your actual work.
So when we finally try to rest, those background apps are still pulling power.
Exactly.
That is why we need to intentionally force quit them. So what does human low power mode look like when we hit that 10% mark?
Low power mode for a human requires radically minimizing sensory input and decision-making.
Sensory input. Okay.
Just as a phone dims its screen and stops fetching new emails, a human in low power mode needs to retreat from bright lights, loud noises, and the demand to process new information.
So no podcasts at 2x speed while cooking dinner.
Exactly. It means putting the phone in another room. It means single tasking. It is the explicit refusal to engage with anything that requires high cognitive load.
And John identifies the literal charging cables in this scenario. He says, good sleep, quiet time, and simple rest are like charging the battery.
Simple as that.
But the problem is, we hate using the actual charging cables because they take too long. We want a fast charge.
We want the quick fix.
So instead of quiet time and sleep, we plug into cheap knockoff cables. We drink an espresso at 4 p.m. We eat a handful of sugar. We use adrenaline and panic to force the battery gauge to read 15% for another hour, but we are irreparably degrading the battery's overall lifespan in the process.
Relying on stress hormones to simulate energy is the definition of a fast, destructive charge.
Yes.
True charging requires taking the device offline. You cannot optimally charge a phone while simultaneously playing a graphics-heavy game on it. The intake of power must exceed the output. But when conditioning tells us that taking the brain offline is a failure, we guarantee that the battery will never reach 100%.
It'll just hover at 40% forever. Right now, I want you, the listener, to mentally check your own internal battery meter. Don't judge it, just observe it.
Take a look.
Are you coasting in the green at 80%? Are you dipping into the yellow zone around 40%, feeling that initial friction of fatigue? Or are you staring at a blinking red 5%, aggressively pushing yourself to keep listening, keep analyzing, keep moving, when the only logical next step is to find a dark room and plug in?
Be brutally honest about your percentage.
Be honest with yourself.
Because acknowledging that baseline is a prerequisite for the final layer of this lesson. And this is where we have to pull the camera back and look at the meta-context of the source material. We cannot ignore the medium delivering this message.
The meta lesson. This is where the whole thing becomes incredibly layered. We are analyzing an English language lesson.
Right.
And the very end of their segment is something they call the calm word tour. After spending 20 minutes dissecting the existential dread of modern labor, John and Neha slow the pace down to review the specific vocabulary words they want their students to memorize.
It is a standard pedagogical tool, but the curation of the vocabulary list is just startling.
It really is. Look at the specific words they are embedding into a B1 level curriculum. They define burnout as what happens when we push too hard for too long and feel drained.
Yeah.
They define intentional as done on purpose with a clear reason. They define conditioning as the way people are trained over time to think or behave in a certain way. And they also throw in unwind and guilt trip.
Think about that. Historically, a B1 English textbook would focus on vocabulary for, I don't know, making travel arrangements, describing hobbies, or conducting a basic job interview.
Yes, you learn where is the train station, and I would like a glass of water.
Exactly. But John and Neha have decided that navigating the global economy requires you to know the word burnout.
Is burnout the new hello? Is guilt trip the new how are you?
Well, language is not static, right?
Hello.
It evolves as an adaptive response to environmental pressures. You only invent and teach words for things you encounter frequently.
Right, the whole 50 words for snow concept.
Exactly. If a culture lives in a frozen climate, they develop extensive vocabulary for snow. If a B1 curriculum determines that an intermediate learner must understand the psychological nuance of societal conditioning and burnout, well, it confirms that burnout is the dominant environmental weather system of our era.
Oh, man.
You learn the word burnout because modern society is burning people out.
It turns the vocabulary list into a diagnostic toolkit. They aren't just giving these learners words to pass a test, they are giving them the linguistic scalpels required to dissect their own suffering.
Linguistic scalpels. I like that.
But I have to ask, does naming the anxiety actually help, or does it just give us another thing to hyperfixate on? Does knowing the word burnout make you more prone to experiencing it?
Neurobiologically speaking, naming an emotion is one of the most effective ways to downregulate it.
Really? Just naming it?
Yes, it is a process called affect labeling.
Affect labeling.
When you experience a vague, unnamed dread, the amygdala, which is the brain's threat center, is highly active. But when you assign a specific, accurate word to that feeling, activity physically shifts from the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for logic and executive function.
Wow.
Naming the monster pulls it out of the shadows and places it under a microscope. It gives the learner agency.
So instead of just feeling like you are inexplicably failing at life while sitting on the couch, you can say, I am currently experiencing productivity guilt as a result of societal conditioning, which is preventing intentional rest.
Exactly.
You haven't magically solved the problem, but you have contained it within a framework.
Containment is the first step toward resolution.
Yeah.
And the brilliance of John and Neha's approach is that the environment they create for the lesson actively models the behavior they are teaching.
Wait, say that again?
The medium perfectly mirrors the message.
Break that down. How does the teaching method mirror the lesson on rest?
Think about the psychological state of an adult learning a new language.
It's stressful.
It is an inherently stressful, high-friction environment. It triggers massive insecurities about competence and intelligence. It demands exactness and
Oh,
perfectionism.
totally. You feel like an idiot when you can't remember the word for apple.
Right. It is the exact type of environment where productivity guilt thrives. A learner is highly prone to thinking, I didn't understand that idiom. I am failing. I must study harder. I cannot stop listening until I comprehend every single syllable.
Which is the exact same toxic loop as the messy kitchen.
Yes.
The language learner's escape hatch is obsessively looking up words in a dictionary to prove they're working hard.
Exactly. And John and Neha actively short-circuit that anxiety loop before it can even begin.
How so?
Neha explicitly states in the audio, dictionary fights are banned on this podcast.
I love that line.
And John follows up with, just relax and let the English wash over you. Take what you understand and don't stress about every single word.
Oh, that is so subtle and so brilliant. They are actively removing the perfectionism from the educational process itself.
They really are.
They are telling the listener that partial understanding is an acceptable outcome.
They are providing a safe sandbox to practice intentional rest while doing a mildly challenging task.
Yeah.
They are essentially saying, you do not have to earn your progress by being flawless.
Wow.
They are demonstrating how to interact with a difficult system, like a new language, without letting it drain your battery to zero.
It is a masterclass in emotional regulation disguised as grammar practice.
It is.
Neha even preempts the listener's post-lesson guilt. At the very end, she says, thank you so much for spending your time with us today. You didn't waste it. You invested it in yourself. She knows exactly what the listener's brain is going to do when the audio stops.
She anticipates the conditioned response.
Yep.
The listener finishes the episode and the internal voice immediately says, you just sat around for 20 minutes listening to a podcast when you should have been answering emails.
And she forcefully inserts herself into that internal monologue to correct the narrative. You didn't waste it. You invested it. She is reminding them that charging the battery is a productive act. She is reinforcing the Zeigarnik loop we talked about earlier. She's labeling the time as a completed, intentional investment rather than an accidental distraction.
It reveals how deeply intertwined language and culture are. When you learn a language, you are not just acquiring syntax. You are acquiring the cultural anxieties of the people who speak it.
That's profound.
By identifying words like burnout and giving permission to rest, John and Neha are providing an emotional survival guide for the English-speaking corporate world.
That is exactly what this is, an emotional survival guide. And the text offers one final, incredibly gentle piece of advice that I want to directly pass on to you right now.
Yeah, pay attention to this.
Neha tells her students, you do not have to memorize everything today. Just choose one or two of these words and try to use them this week. I am challenging you to do the exact same thing.
Pick just one.
Choose just one of these concepts. Maybe it is the word intentional. Maybe it is conditioning. Maybe it is visualizing the battery. Pick one and actively hunt for it in your daily routine this week.
The goal is simply to observe the mechanism in action without immediately trying to dismantle the whole machine.
Exactly. When you inevitably sit on the sofa on Friday night and the guilt starts pacing the floorboards, don't just suffer through it.
Right. Don't just sit there in agony.
Point at it and name it. Say, there is the societal conditioning. There is the low battery warning. See what happens when you turn the lights on.
Just observe it. And to synthesize the vast landscape we have covered from this B1 lesson, the intense discomfort you feel when attempting to relax is not a personal failing.
Say that louder for the people in the back.
It is the predictable result of lifelong operant conditioning that trained you to view stillness as a threat to your social and economic survival.
We unpacked the dangerous transaction of viewing rest as a reward and the existential panic that arises when we attack our fundamental human worth to our daily output.
We examined the mechanical necessity of the phone battery metaphor, which strips away the moral judgment of exhaustion and replaces it with the objective reality of resource depletion. A dead battery is not lazy. It is just empty.
And we explored the tactical solution of intentionality, transforming rest from an accidental collapse into a purposeful, strategic task that satisfies the brain's need for completion while simultaneously recharging the system.
It is a robust, highly effective framework for survival.
It is. And I want to leave you with John's final reassurance because it is the complete antithesis of the always be hustling narrative. He says, you don't have to earn rest by being perfect all day. You still deserve it.
Such a good reminder.
Just by existing, you have secured the right to recover.
However, we cannot ignore a glaring paradox built into the very platform hosting this lesson.
Oh, right. The
The
ending.
source material ends with an automated algorithmic prompt typical of learning platforms. It tells the learners, your progress doesn't end here. To continue advancing your English skills, click on the next video.
Let's push on that friction. The very system teaching them to rest is immediately demanding further output.
It highlights the ultimate trap of self-improvement culture. If we are constantly striving for progress, even in our personal development, when do we ever actually arrive?
Never.
If you put in the psychological work, confront your conditioning, and finally master this art of intentional rest, what happens next? Does resting optimally just become another productivity goal to achieve?
Oh, that is insidious. Are we going to start tracking our rest on spreadsheets to ensure we are doing it efficiently?
It is a very real risk. The conditioning is so deep that we can easily turn relaxation into a competitive sport.
I took a more intentional nap than you did.
Exactly. My low power mode is highly optimized.
If we aren't careful, getting good at resting simply becomes another metric to track, another standard to fail at, and another item on our endless to-do list to feel guilty about. We end up right back where we started, pacing the room because we didn't rest perfectly. That is the paradox to wrestle with the next time you sit down on that sofa. Are you actually letting go of the need to produce? Or are you just trying to win a gold medal in relaxation? Are you resting, or are you just working really hard at resting? Think about it. See you next time.